Testing, testing, testing. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Testing, testing, testing. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Is this a phone call, not a video chat? Is it a phone call?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, good. Okay, hold it, hold it. Let's see. No, I don't want to do it. Let it more. Allow. The multi allow report. Sure, allow your report. Why don't I allow host me? Where are you, Milkyy-Media? Trying to get you in here. I don't want to put you in reading room. Where are you? Right? Milkyy-Media.
I'm here.
Oh, you were there. Oh, hi.
I can see you.
Oh, you can see me. I see. Oh, you're not coming on the video. Okay, that's fine. I don't have to see you if you don't want.
Yeah,
But,
as long as you can hear me. Yeah?
I can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay. So, thank you for giving your time for this, our interest in what you're doing.
Okay. Well, I'm very happy to talk to you.
Yeah,
And let's see. Let me think. I want to make sure I'm not straining here. Can you turn up your volume at all? Yeah, I'm hard of hearing. I have these hearing aids.
oh, I can come a little closer to the microphone. How's
that would
this?
be good. Yeah, that would be good. Okay, great.
I'll talk louder.
Okay.
How's that? Is that better?
Yeah, that's better. Yeah, that's better.
Okay.
And so let me click this. Okay, there I am. Oh, I do see you now.
You do? Okay, great.
I see you, as they say in the Avatar. That's a great. Did you see the movie Avatar?
No, I didn't see that. You mean the one with James Cameron, director?
Yeah, that he made on the moon of Jupiter. Wonderful movie.
I saw parts of it.
Yeah.
I saw very few parts. Yeah.
Wonderful film. And there's a thing at the end where one of the heroine says to the hero, I see you, these natives who live on that planet, or on that moon, which is like a planet, when they meet each other, they say, I see you. That's what they say.
I was going to say the same thing.
If you have a chance to see it, just let me say, if you ever have a chance to see it, it is an awesome movie. I mean, really, it's amazing.
I should find the time to finally watch that.
You know, he's a genius, and he paid his dues with all those Terminator things, and then he made that amazing movie, which is just incredible. The Communist Party in China would not show that movie to the masses because they're too much like the bad guys in the movie. But they showed it to 3D theaters for their own communist, like elite. But they wouldn't show it to the mass. They didn't allow it to be released to the mass people. So anyway, okay, here we are. So nice to see you. So I have this this list that you gave.
Yeah.
I have it queued up here, so I won't directly see you. For some reason it's not showing on my Zoom thing, but never mind. So I'm going to follow this list. So you wanted an invocation. So
if you could, that would be very nice. What do you recommend?
Do you want it in English or Tibetan?
If we could do both, translate it, if it's short enough.
All right, Tambala me Sandera Muse, Tambala Muse, Gambala me Gandela, Tame Muse, Sonda Tapu, Chado Holo Jury, Jerotan, Chado Falasan, Sunday, Bangla London, Dela, Detam, so I put them both in terms of offering of our discussion to the Buddha, Tambala me Sandera Muse, who is the best teacher. And to the Dharma, which is the best teaching, the unexcelled teaching, actually not best, but unexcelled teaching. And development and to the Sangha, the community, which is the unexcelled leaders, or the unexcelled leaders. Kojo Sono Chopapo, so to the three precious jewels. And then the second verse I did was, who has the 1,000 arms of the 1,000 wheel-turning monarchs, who has the 1,000 eyes of the 1,000 Buddhas of the good aeon, who manifests whatever is helpful to whomsoever, to the teacher Avalokiteshvara, we offer this event. Okay, how's that?
That's perfect. I think that covers everything. and that's what we're doing here. Yes. What you just said.
Okay, good.
So I just want to open up by thanking you, and I'm meeting you this way, and we have the list, so it's right in front of me.
Yes. Okay.
I'll
good.
start with the first one.
All right.
Is please give an idea of what's going on for you right now concerning Tibet House, with any of the work that you're doing, the events and programs currently. What can you share? What are you promoting with it?
Yeah. So, well, what it is, as you know, since last March, the last public event of people in person was last February, and when we had our big concert. And then since March, the place in the city center, the Cultural Embassy in New York, has been closed to the public mostly, and even many of the people worked from home. And Menla was mostly closed for that first heavy period. And so we had basically, since a lot of our events, running events, have to do with people assembling in audiences and in participants, they have all been canceled. So the income very much canceled, except for some of our publications and so on. So we shifted to doing online events. And actually, and also we launched, my wife, who is the main boss of Tibet House. I give talks, but she's the boss. And she launched a fund drive to last us until we had assumed last fall would be the opening up, because we assumed our government would be semi-competent in dealing with this pandemic, which was unfortunately a misassumption. But anyway, we did a fund drive, and we got one former board member who's a somewhat wealthy, anonymous person, but who gave a matching grant, and then we raised, based on matching that grant, we have managed to match it from all friends and supporters, which kind of made up for having to close Menla over the summer and so on, and not to be able to have any events in the city also. And our board, really stepped up and helped, and it was really quite good. And then the second thing, we had an event with Lion's Roar magazine, which is a Buddhist magazine. I don't know if you're familiar with it, which recently broke free from its affiliation with the Trungpa organization because of some scandals that they had, and is now ready to talk to every kind of Buddhist. It became more pluralistic, let's call it. And we did a wonderful Dalai Lama Global Vision 2021 event with them, when we raised some funds with that. And then I did a lot of teaching, and we got other friends and people. I did co-teaching with different people. So we basically had income to the institution. And then also, we got a government PPP grant from the first big multi-trillion-dollar thing they did for small businesses. They didn't give that much to small businesses, but we got a little bit of a grant. We were able to therefore keep core staff alive. And other people went on unemployment, and we allowed them to stay at Menla. Some of the people who were longer-term workers there, we allowed them to stay there free, and we actually fed them. And they also got unemployment with that little bit bonus that they added to it.
Okay.
And so we sort of survived, and we did some sort of grounds and building cleanup work. with some of those folks. And so that's what happened. And then, of course, with the catastrophe of the last few months, we are continuing catastrophe and now the new spike. We still haven't really been able to open up, although we've had a few events with 2 or 3 people coming, and most of the people online, 2 or 3 local people, you know. So anyway, we're still in kind of suspended animation. And you see, our long-term strategy of funding the city center has been because someone donated the Menla property to us, and we've been running that now for 20 years, approximately. And we have events, you know, we earn the money with events at that place, where we can then support with the surplus the city center. And sometimes we have done that because city center always loses money. It's like a museum or a thing like that. You can't really make money with a small gallery and your regular staff, and then you do benefits, you know.
Yeah, it's difficult.
But our strategy when we were given that land was to make it a healing place based on Tibetan medicine and Buddhist medicine, I could say Indian and Tibetan medicine, and that has been successful, but not in a huge way, but in somewhat of a way. And we resisted some movement in early board members when we first received the gift of the land and so on. They thought we should sell it, actually, and use that as an endowment. But we wouldn't have been able to sell it for that much in its condition it was when it was given to us, A, and B, it's much better, you know, I know about managing endowments for nonprofits, and you know, it doesn't give you that much money. You can't invest in high-risk things with a nonprofit. You could only get a few percent to spend, and you'd have to have huge endowment to make up for a few $100,000. So instead, we thought it would be good promoting Tibetan medicine, Tibetan yogas, Tibetan teachings in this setting in the countryside, and doing Tibetan ecological work at Menla, and eventually hiring Tibetans to do it and training them. Then that way we would have jobs for them, we would develop the value of the property, and also we would have whatever surplus we could make in a year we could contribute to supporting the center in the city. And that has turned out to be, and our current board is very happy with that strategy. But as I say, it's all been on pause for about a year now, and a little less than a year, and we hope it will be moving again by May. And I can say it's a good omen today. Both my wife and I, as 80-year-olds, 79 and 80, we just got our injections, our Moderna vaccines, first shot today. So
how was that?
Really happy about that. And I think maybe by May, maybe April, May, we'll be able to start having in-house events and restore a normal functioning of the Tibetan House. So that's one thing. And the other sort of silver lining is that we have found online the ability to reach people all over the world, from Asia, from India, from Europe, Australia, and so on, and complicated timing sometimes, but we've been able to sort of expand, actually. And then second blessing that we've had, even in the middle of this, is that His Holiness Dalai Lama, our patron founder, he has, as you probably know, because of your knowledge of the Tibet movement, he resigned 9 years ago as political leader of the government in exile and de facto political leader of the Tibetans under occupation. Although I can't see them, but anyway, he is, so they consider him their leader. And he resigned, however, political responsibility, but he then doubled down on his support of the cultural preserving institutions around the world, of which we are the second one that was founded after the New Delhi one.
Oh, the second one, that's
He's
great.
been showing quite substantial support for us. And that was that Lions Roar event that we did with his support, and he promoted it to his 14 million person mailing list, like email list that he has, And he's very popular among Chinese and people all over the world. So anyway, that was another silver lining, is his more active, strong push. Because in the past, one reason Tibet House was still small scale, humble, you could say, is that in the past, the Tibetan officials here in America were very competitive with us, in the sense that they wanted economic money, just money for their salaries here in America, and also to use in the refugee exile community to do projects. And they also, then the other group, big group, was the political group that wanted to lobby, the Congress, and lobby in Europe at the UN and so on. And so
Yes.
they were competitive, so the Tibet supporters were thinking, well, maybe I better do politics, but that's more quickly going to save Tibet, and later we'll worry about the culture. So obviously the way China is doubling down on its suppression of its minorities, and particularly Tibet, because they have a policy reason to wish to destroy Tibetan culture and to sinicize the Tibetans, well, they'll be no longer recognizable as different than the Chinese, to defend their pretense that they always owned Tibet and that it was always part of China, which is simply a lie. And they know that the existence of Tibetans with their language and culture and the fact that they're different from Chinese people undercuts that pretense, and they want that, therefore they have to try to destroy them. So anyway, so that's what we're doing, okay? So now, what we're doing now is we are looking forward to opening up again, and we are also doubling down on our online programs. And also we are planning, in this year, we are planning to do an endowment push, which His Holiness authorized and requested us to do in 1998, when he visited our new cultural embassy in the city. And he urged us to try that, and we had a little success with it, but not much, because as I say, within the Tibetan support movement, we were at a disadvantage competing with some other officials, Tibetan officials. And now they are kind of more, they can't really say anything now because the Dalai Lama is so actively showing his support for us, so they can't, we're in a better balance with them, put it that way. But we still support them. We have always supported them. We never competed with them. We always considered that the doorway for people to become Tibet supporters would be to discover the beauty and the wonderfulness of Tibetan culture. And that then they might sign up to do political sort of activism, or they may sign up to help refugees and financially and so on. And so the primary doorway for them, the easier way for them to get to is meet Tibet and to get to know Tibet. And that's the Dalai Lama's original thing. He asked me on his first trip to America, when Jimmy Carter finally let him come and have a visa, because Kissinger had been blocking him and Jimmy Brzezinski had been blocking him for some time.
Okay.
And not to annoy the Chinese. And Carter and Cyrus Vance finally gave him the visa. And he asked for a Tibet house right then in 1979. But we weren't able to really get rolling another 5, 6, 7, 8 years later. We couldn't do much in the first 5, 6, 7 years. So anyway, that's what we're up to now. So I hope that's not too verbose an answer to your question.
Oh, you went a little farther, but that's okay.
The other sort of priority within the context of this endowment campaign is also to bring up and to develop confidence in our support network community, that the younger generation can carry the ball. That it doesn't just depend on me and Nina, because we're 80 years old this year, both of us. And
congratulations.
The Dalai Lama ordered me to live to 104, and I ordered Nina. I don't know if either of us can fulfill that. I don't think so. And the insurance actuaries only give us another decade at most to be active in any way. So we have to really work on, we have Ganden, we have Michael, we have a number of younger, Beata, Lynn, we have a number of younger people, and a few of my former graduate students who are doctors, professors themselves in some way, or translators. And so we're working on, this year we're working on sort of figure out how to sort of turn things over to them and get them to be able to function sustainably. So that's
Yeah.
the last thing I wanted to mention. Okay. So
Okay.
what's the next question?
The next question, I think, you got into a lot of the other ones overlapping, but that's good because it's all connected.
Yes.
Uh,
Well, I could tell you maybe a little story about Menla.
sure. I love to hear
I
it.
don't know if you may have already heard it, in which case please stop me. But when I co-founded, as I say, His Holiness asked me and a wealthy lady who lived in Texas who passed away since then, who helped a little at that very beginning, in 1979 to do a Tibet house. But we really didn't get going as an organization until His Holiness asked Richard Gere to help us.
Okay.
And Richard Gere came on. We founded a board and so forth in '86 and '87.
Okay.
And,
87.
and I was, as a founder, I was understood to be the content provider, and the sort of speaker about what is culture, what is the Dharma.
Yes.
And he was supposed to manage the fundraising and the organizational aspect.
Okay.
And he claimed at the time when he came that he would get it all done. We'd have like a big building in Fifth Avenue and a lot of optimistic things he said, which was good, and he put effort and energy into it. But he found it much more difficult than he expected, because he didn't realize that we would be up against China ourselves in a way. In that everybody who's wealthy, every corporation, every foundation, they all have programs with China in the last 30 years. They have something going on. The government does. So Tibet House, it's like the Asia Society won't really use the word Tibet. If they do an exhibition, they call it Himalayan art, this kind of thing. It's all of this stuff about being paired, all this catering to the communist China. So it's very hard to, Richard Gere found it quite difficult to have the quick success we wanted. However, he stayed with us for 4 or 5 years, from '87 to '92. And we did the big Year of Tibet thing in '91, '92, and he was a huge help, and I dearly liked him. However, he always was a little restless about it, because he doesn't so much like museum shows and sort of people who are not going to get out and fight for Tibet, but are just going to love the paintings or something, And then when these competing Tibetan officials tried to grab him away from us in '92 to go and lobby everybody and save Tibet by fighting China, in the info war type of thing, he happily did it. And so at that point, they all proclaimed that, and we also helped the Tibetan office in New York buy a building there. Our president at the time, a woman named Elsie Walker, who I brought, who happened to be a cousin of Bush Sr., a presidential cousin.
Yes.
I brought her because I knew that family, and she was the president, and she helped raise money for this building on 32nd Street that we were sharing with them. It wasn't really our full Tibet house. We decided to share that building, because get them, and they were in a horrible place themselves, renting someplace, the Tibet office. And at that point, they announced that Richard, to save face, he announced that was going to be Tibet House, but of course he couldn't function with that because it was just an office in a town, in an old small brownstone. So I went to see His Holiness in India on my way to Bhutan, to take a group to Bhutan, and I said, Your Holiness, they're saying that Tibet House job is done, but I remember when we founded, you wanted something that would be there for the long haul, and you even said at our inauguration that you really needed a strong Tibet House in about 30 years. But you were getting elderly, and Dharamsala was more diffuse, and the cultural talent, so to speak, had spread around the world. You would need a strong institution, well-funded and a powerful cultural institution in New York or in America. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you guys only got started. What do you mean they're saying they finished? And then he knew a little bit the backstory, the political thing. because his own officials were doing it. So he said, well, you just do it. He told me, you do it. And I said, Your Holiness, I'm not Richard Gere. I'm not famous. I'm not wealthy. I have another full-time job as a professor in a college, etc. I told him. So he said, well, I don't care, you do it. And you're going to be able to do it. And that night, I was feeling very stressed with that request. And that night I had this dream. And in the dream, I had a kind of epiphany that the way to preserve Tibetan culture was to promote Tibetan medicine. Because by a strange, I could say prophetic thing, my original teacher, when I was in my 20s, in the 60s, he forced me actually against my wishes to study Tibetan medicine and to apprentice to the Dalai Lama's personal physician. And I got to really like the system. And he said, you will not understand the Tibetans unless you understand their medicine, how they live. And so in this dream, I remembered that. I remembered that His Holiness told me when I interviewed him at Harvard in 1981 about what he wanted Tibet to be like if it did ever get free. In those days, we weren't talking about different types of freedom. Let's just get free. And he said, after a little bit of being pressed, because at first he didn't want to say it, but then he finally said, well, I think we should be like Switzerland. We have beautiful air, forests, mountains, medicinal waters, hot springs, and beautiful herbs, and a wonderful medical tradition. And so, which I was agreeing with him because I'd studied it already by then, which he knew. And he said, that's what our industry would be. We'd be like Switzerland with sanatoriums and so forth and so on. I have that on tape, actually, in an interview I did. So then I remembered that. And then I saw Tibetan medicine sort of healing centers, the complementary healing centers, like spas or something, around the world. Like, why wait for Tibet to be free? Like, you could have them in India, in Nepal, you could have them in the West, in the Colorado, in the mountains, or whatever, Tibet-like landscapes in the Alps in Europe and in Switzerland itself. And I saw a whole bunch of these kind of organizations sort of just pop up like mushrooms in the dream.
Yeah,
and I felt a relief because I said, that's what we have to do. We have to, in promoting Tibetan culture, we have to promote the medicine. People will see the benefit of it, and then they will want to support Tibetan culture. And so from that very moment when I had the financial responsibility as well as the ideational, let's say, responsibility, I was going around whining and saying, could someone please give us a place we can make a Tibetan medicine spa, in addition to the city center. And it's because of that appeals that I was generally making. Finally, someone told someone else who had this place near where I live, where we built our own little home here in this park, starting in the 70s. And so, someone gave us the Pathwork Center in Phoenicia, which is a marvelous, like what in Tibet is called a hidden valley.
Yeah.
And it's a magic, it's like a Shangri-La hidden valley where you go to rejuvenate and to find your, to find your good diet and calm and whatever, and use your mind also medically, healing wise. And so then we gave it the name, when we did receive that finally as a gift, we almost were given land in Santa Fe, almost given another thing somewhere else, but it would have been very difficult, something so far away. So this was perfect. And when we received it right around my 60th birthday, then in my 60th year, we sort of signed away our 60s and our 70s.
Yeah.
Working, developing it, and to create a flagship, which we hope will be replicated around the country. So that's the development of Menla is really very much within the mission of the Tibet House, of preserving the culture and promoting it and preserving it.
Wow.
As I say,
now I understand.
You realize that the slogan of Tibet House is not Save Tibet or Free Tibet, although we love people who do that. But the slogan of Tibet House is Love Tibet. So then the idea is people get to really feel that it's something important and they love it, and then they might want to save it or free it or learn about it or whatever. Then that's up to them what they want to do. Okay, so that's a little bit about Menla. Menla means medicine Buddha in Tibetan. Is it what it means?
Oh, that's a Tibetan word. Okay.
Menjila. It's a word for medicine Buddha in Tibetan.
Okay. Wow, that's so much history and explains, everything about the projects connected to each other. And I didn't really know there was so much different angles. I thought the Tibetans were more unified, but then
Tibetans they're unified in some way.
But in the fine tuning of
They
it.
have themselves. I don't know if you have ever studied about yaks. They're wonderful animals.
I see them in
They have the
Woodstock.
best milk of all animals, of all bovine animals. They really do, and they're wonderful. But there is one thing about them: they're only a little bit tame. They sometimes run away, become wild yaks. In the old days, not now, they're shot by the Chinese, but in the old days they're like that. So they have an expression: when you have 20 Tibetans in a room, be aware that there are 40 horns. Which I think is quite sweet. I like it. But
I'd like to learn a lot more of those sayings.
like a yak, they're very
I'm sure they
individual.
have.
They're
Yeah.
very energetic people and very enterprising, and and they'll competitive. That's a good way. I mean, if they feel that the best thing is to try to free the place and to push China back, that's excellent. It may take a long time to do, but it's excellent. If they, do you know what I mean? It's all right.
Yeah, yeah.
We don't
So
mind.
I just wanted to share, let me go very quickly through this about my background based on what you just said in there. I knew about Pathworks in the mid 80s,
I see.
and I'd actually sort of dated a person that lived there,
I
and
see.
we met at Omega Institute in 1987.
Oh, you and me?
No,
Oh, you're a friend. Okay, yeah.
my friend who was living at Pathworks.
Yes.
So she always had so many wonderful stories about the place and how they used to run it. And although she did tell me, they had some issues and that's kind of why they disbanded. And it always stayed in my mind. Then, as I found out more about you gradually over time, then I heard that you turned the Pathwork Center into Menla, so I was very intrigued.
Well, not directly, actually. The Pathway Center people, they lost it to the bank because of the
Right,
money
so
the loan they took
it
to
went
Buddha.
into limbo. I don't, I know that you didn't have a direct transfer, but I just mean the remnants of it, the
Yeah,
location.
sure.
And I'm sure some of the energy that they really could take advantage of, it's always there. So now you have the spot.
Yeah, sure.
So it went from one spiritual path to another one, which is appropriate, and it didn't become
No,
like some.
we support everybody with every spiritual path because unlike a Dharma center, we're a cultural center, and also we follow, even if we were a Dharma center, we follow Dalai Lama's idea that one in the current New Age, people shouldn't convert each other from their religions. Everybody should keep their grandmother's religion, and they
Okay.
can learn from other ones some mystical things, some technical things, meditational things, so forth. But to keep it in terms of whatever their own cultural matrix is. And so grandma won't get mad and won't be upset that they've abandoned the whatever their grandma thing is. So we follow that principle. And therefore we've had every single kind of spiritual practice there that you can think of. But although we've tried to avoid, and I don't think we've ever had anybody who we consider like a cult leader. We don't like cults.
No. You
I
don't
really
like
don't like
cults.
them. And
Okay.
especially, of course, I don't like Tibetan cults, which there have been a few scandal-ridden Tibetan
There's
cults.
now that I did bring up this other group I mentioned. I took his name out because I didn't really want to bring it up in our talk here. There's another fellow who says he's a reincarnation. He's the what is it called? The
Oh, that's Chinese guy?
No, I don't know. He's an American-born.
Oh. They're probably Maitreya or something.
Yeah, Buddha he calls himself the phrase Buddha Maitreya the Christ. I don't know if it's possibly some kind of a cult-like thing, but my investigation showed that he got falsely got approval from some Tibetan lamas, and I think they regretted it later on.
Yeah, actually, that's one particular one I haven't caught up with yet. Lately.
But see, I think maybe that's one example of what you mean, that you got to beware of cults that spring up. So the difference.
I have a strict principle, which are the Dalai Lamas also, which is that the teacher of this type of thing is the servant of the student, not the dominator of the student. And all this big talk you hear about masters and this and that. And of course, you can have a master shoemaker. You can have a master violinist. So there can be a master thing where the student is not a slave, but also, unfortunately, master goes along with master slave, and that sucks as far as spiritual teachings go. And Tibetans, unfortunately, there have been a few of those, and some recent spectacular ones, and they're no good. I feel. I don't like it. And Dalai is very nice about that. He is himself clearly a master of what he teaches, but in the sense of he masters himself, but he's also a master of himself, so he's not desperate to master other people. He's very easygoing, and although in a ceremony he can act very majestic with his gestures and things, but then when he meets you, just like he won't let you bow, but he just shakes your hand or something, and says hi, or whatever. Because you don't have to blow a trumpet to meet him.
No,
Like some people behave like that.
Just the basic respect. He doesn't want you to go like overboard.
No, because Buddha, if you become enlightened, you feel you're equal with other people. And actually, they need more help than you do, so you want to help them.
Yeah.
You don't want to domineer anybody, because that doesn't help them. People are harmed by being dominated by others, usually.
Yeah. So that's one of the hallmarks. That would be like true indication of Buddhahood, something like that. You would need to understand that. Unless, are you going to get misled as an ignorant student, not knowing that? You fall into a cult, maybe.
Right.
So
that's our principle, and that's his whole thing. Like an example, I love it. I was in India, Nan and I were there a few years ago, decades ago. And he was he did a teaching with some Indian people, in a hotel there, maybe 100, 200 people. And Indians are very much ready to bow to any guru, right? They have that in their culture. And he said, and at the end of the teaching, he said, well, now I was asked to do a white Tara initiation and blessing, he said, but the problem is that I don't have one, he says. And then if you've seen the people, they were like, oh, like deflation, disappointment. So then before they completely collapsed, he said, well, but on the other hand, it's nice, I'll do the ceremony, and then you'll find that you have the blessing, he said. Because white Tara, Tara is like, the Virgin Mary for Buddhists or something, or female Buddha. So white Tara, you have your own connection with white Tara. You have your own compassionate and wonder-working mind, and that's white Tara. So the ceremony gives you an excuse to discover that you have that blessing yourself. So it's very psychologically, it may seem like a minor thing to make a little joke like that, but it really shows the difference. Because the way that some Tibetans have created cults precisely is act like, well, now I'm giving you initiation, now you have to look at me as a deity. And you have to worship me. And he is in fact jumping out of that dominating position, even in the ceremonial setting. And he's saying, It gives us both an excuse to think that we can have the blessing. We can have it because you have it yourself. So he's not saying, now I give initiation, now you have to go get me a BMW or something. I mean, he doesn't play that game. He steps out of the authoritarian, domineering thing, which I admire hugely because he's Dalai Lama. He could easily play that.
Okay. Okay.
Okay? And with Indian people in particular, they're so ready to follow a guru, because they come from a patriarchal guru-oriented society.
Yeah.
Okay, what else? Who is that nice friend of yours, by the way? She's not nobody.
No, she's not nobody. She's nobody's companion. Her name is Havazilia.
Miss Nobody.
She's Havazilia.
I'm sorry, Knob Odie.
Well, or you can blend it together just like nobody.
I know.
Yeah, I was meaning to introduce her. She's putting a log on the fire.
Oh,
The fireplace.
Thank you.
That's
always good. Okay, what's the next question?
Yes. Yeah, I did also. When you were talking about the Tibetan medicine as being the main feature and the knowledge that you want to teach and to use at Menla as the flagship. So that was, I think that's quite important. Myself, I don't know much about it, and I now I need to look into it because I saw a diversity of the different programs and other teachings you're offering there, as I've seen.
Some of them, we're
very
just
inclusive.
We're just renting the place to, but we will only rent it to people who have a like interest. It may be Hasidism, it may be Sikhism, it may be Judaism, or whatever it might be. But we not all the programs are what we would initiate because we have to survive the place. So other spiritual seekers and programs we've had the pathward people there. In fact, sometimes we were very open to Eva Parakas's followers, any of them who were interested in being there. The intermediate owner who had bought it from the bank, who's the lady who gave it to us, who was not a pathward person, but the people she wasn't on the property, she had some other people on there. And they were not friendly to the pathward people, but we were perfectly open and friendly with them.
Okay.
So the point is that the more successful we are, the more of our own programs we will be doing. But so far we also do other programs as well as the ones that we do. We facilitate other people's programs as well.
Okay, I see. And you mentioned that it's a flagship, kind of. I would use the word like a prototype, and you want it to be replicated because it can be planted anywhere else. Based on the original one. So Menla is the first. Are there any inkling of new locations?
Yes, we have an affiliate in Tucson, Arizona. Although the main original patron of that may retired now, so we're not sure how that will do. We have interest from people in Los Angeles, in Hawaii. And in India, we had a little interest near the Dharamsala area, but we've just not had and then we have for the kind of Menla sort of thing, that is the medicine thing. And we have very good relations. We did a conference in the past, in fact, about Tibetan medicine worldwide, which is a very successful tradition, by the way, in both India and China. It's there as a parallel with Ayurveda in India, but very successful in its own right. And it's the one thing about Tibetan culture that the Chinese communists did not destroy because they also use it. Although they tried to sort of de-Buddhify it, they tried to act like it was just herbs or something, And during their more radical periods. And lately they've been actually into Tibetan medicine themselves, which is hard for them internationally because they're so destructive to the country itself and the people. But in China, they market Tibetan medicine quite a lot. Some companies do. So So there are these inklings, but we have not. It's been taking time, and we have not yet convinced some people who might jump into it, who have the land, who have the interest, but they're not sure that it's viable until we really become solid, where it looks like it's long-term stable and viable. So to do that, we're doing this endowment. We're coming back to the endowment aim, and we think we have a good moment for that as people are coming out of the COVID.
Yeah.
The first horseman of the apocalypse of plague,
Yeah.
has alerted people to the other horsemen of the apocalypse that are lurking there, especially with the climate disruption, that has been affected by industrialization.
Yeah.
Excess
So
industrialization.
you're using the Christian biblical symbology. However, that leads to one of the other questions. What can you say about the scheme of the world, or what zeitgeist it's going through now that 2020 is ended, the fiscal year, now we go to 2021? How do you see it? I mean, obviously it has affected you in a tangible way, but on the higher level of thinking, is this just par for the course, or is it a major event in world history?
I think it's a major time. First of all, I follow the Dalai Lama's principle, what he calls world peace through inner peace. And that is that he sees world peace as an educational problem, where individuals have to find self-control, self-restraint, self-conquest, and then they'll be able to make deals, and they will stop trying to conquer other people and conquer land and whatever resources. And so that's been going on in the grand narrative for thousands of years, of course. And there are many people. One of the major problems with getting people to solve these things is many people have a preconceived idea that it's impossible to solve these things. And they even think that Buddhism agrees because of the first noble truth of the inevitable suffering of the ignorant person. And they think people mostly will remain ignorant in the planet. But we don't agree with that. And you mentioned about the biblical thing. Well, obviously, we don't see it quite the same way as St. John of Patmos. But we do see similar, in other words, in Tibet, the Indian and Tibetan Buddhist esotericism has this Shambhala idea, the idea of, which involves a kind of post-Armageddon wonderful period on Earth, where people can really bring out their inner peace, and can live up to it. And I think we are really coming, I interpret these things, like Armageddon, instead of waiting for Armageddon. Armageddon has been happening, since the 20th century kind of was Armageddon. Those world wars were horrendous. And then there's still a kind of war on nature that's been going on with the whole industrialization thing, and which is reaching a climax very soon now, I retired from Columbia a year and a half ago now.
Oh.
And first thing I did was I went to Minneapolis to study with Al Gore in what is called his Climate Reality Leadership Program. And so I really am a little bit up on all of that. And these people who talk like, well, we'll make it to 2100 without too much damage, blah blah blah, they're really wrong. Everything is, if Greenland completely goes, the Arctic thing has nearly gone. If Greenland and the West Antarctic shelf goes, we're talking 20 meters ocean rise. So forget Wall Street, etc. Miami, Bangladesh, etc. Shanghai.
Okay.
So it's really we don't have the time to keep allowing a tremendous amount of stupidity and self-defeating behavior on the planet. So this will help people wake up, I believe. And this past 4 years we've suffered, where we had a psychological case in a position to be in our face all day long and wreck everything possible. And that is a kind of blown the cover of certain type of failure to live up to America's own ideals. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Aligned with the Confederacy, aligned with the Nazis, aligned with the KGB. We've had our own quote unquote temporary ruler aligned with all of our worst enemies, maybe aligned with Benedict Arnold and the British Empire, even you could say. So this has been good because it's blown the cover of people who were pretending not to be like that, but were behaving like that. And wrecking also nature, ruining the environment, poisoning everyone. The love canals all over the country. So when Jimmy Carter tried to get on their case, but he was failed, because they stopped being a loyal opposition in the 70s. So that's it. You don't have democracy if you don't have a loyal opposition. If the other opposing party is at war with you and ready to betray your whole country to win their power, then you no longer have democracy. So that sort of came out in our face now, and 2020 we managed to fend it off, but it'll still take us a while. But this is going to be a great year, and I think we're going to solve some of the. Finally, we might settle the Civil War instead of putting slavery into prison labor camps and Jim Crow and so on. And we might be able to come to terms with the native people here who care for the land for thousands of years before we came here and started wrecking it. And, we might be able to do that. I believe that's what we're going to do in the rest of this century. And we're going to really switch to renewables. Although I think that the nature people have to wake up to the need for a certain type of nuclear to make it, I think, in time.
Okay.
I'm personally persuaded by some very interesting scientists about that. And with this heresy, of course, for Greenpeace and for some of the more radical, clamshell alliance ex-hippies, which I like them too. But I'm just saying they are being unrealistic. I think to think that they can do it, they can with these huge cities that need this day and night power, that they can shift in time. They won't be able to. So anyway, so that's the thing. I'm very optimistic. And I feel that the Tibetan culture has lessons on every important level, so that without changing our mission from the preserving and the developing of people's love for the idea of Tibetan civilization, we will be able to help the West and the Far East, etc., develop a civilization. And like the Dalai Lama always says, like the values that are embodied in Tibetan culture could really help Chinese culture now, which has been, where all spirituality has been crushed down by 80 years, almost 100 years of communism, of materialism. And it's not working, and China's a mess, environmentally China is totally poisoned. Soil, air, water. It's, people can't breathe there, because they've gone into the worst kind of industrialization, and they are exporting it all over the planet with the hundreds and hundreds of coal-fired power plants and things. They're sending it to California, their pollution level. And they're fake, they're lying, the Communist Party, when they say, oh yeah, we'll be carbon neutral by 2016, it's just a lie. They have no plan to do that. They have 300 new coal-fired power plants going right now. So, I think that that won't last. The Chinese people will not stand for not being able to breathe in their big cities. They're going to lose their export market. They have the blame for the COVID thing themselves, for sure. They do have that. And by the way, they covered it up at first. And so, on the other hand, the Free Chinese in Taiwan showed how they handled it beautifully. They had hardly any death or anything because they really did track it down, and they knew it would be bad, and they weren't irresponsible like our leadership and some of the other countries in denial, who used to live in denialism. So I'm very optimistic, and personally, although I've hit 80 this year, I had some shaman tell me, or some psychic tell me, which usually I don't necessarily consult them always, but they came to me and they said, we have some people who want to tell you something that I channeled. And I said, oh, okay. And they told me this is going to be my most fun year yet.
Oh.
And then I said, what do you mean? You mean I'll be dead at 80? And they said, no, you'll be fun because world will be headed in a really good direction, fine. And I think because even though we're so scared because 73 million people voted based on lies, based on all the lies, and all the false, Breitbart type of complete Alex Jones nonsense, they will quickly be disillusioned, I think, when the more truth emerges. Law cases, after they try to renew the Civil War, they can try to do that like they want to, white supremacy and so on.
In this country,
it will also fail like it did the first time. Right?
It's a mess.
So I'm very optimistic, and although there's a lot of work to do, and we hope to be key, we hope to be, seminal in doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And the sort of Dalai Lama perspective, I don't know if you know, like if you ever read his book called Ethics for the New Millennium that he published in 1999.
Not yet.
Where he called for an ethical revolution and spiritual revolution and so on. He has a little bit side like that, and he's very listened to, hundreds of millions of followers in China. Under communism.
So the book, that one from 1999, is that essential? Is that an essential work?
I'm sorry, what?
I don't know how much he's written, but the book that you're speaking of, is that essential?
Yeah, I think that's one of his great works. I really like it.
Okay.
And I always used to teach it when I was in academia, when I would come to the end of the semester on Tibetan history and philosophy. It really is a wonderful book, that book.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where he himself, always learn, also enlightened people also learn more as they go about relative reality. They may know ultimate natures of things, but they also are open to learning. They don't act like I'm supposed to know everything, so I'm not going to learn anything. He, coming from a country that was at an intermediate level of technology, let's say, because of its balance with nature, the way Tibet was, and the fact that the Tibetan plateau doesn't support a huge population. Now that the Chinese try to colonize it, they're ruining it, feeding it too much, making a desert here, cutting the forest there, and melting the glaciers 2 or 3 times faster than they need to melt even under global warming, which also messes up the jet stream, and which also brings droughts to California, Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras, and even British Columbia in the 2040s and 50s. You'll see it.
Yeah.
And because it messes up the Nino, and all the jet stream going across the Pacific.
Okay.
What they're destroying of that plateau is why the Chinese attempt to colonize. It's very bad, and mine and dime rivers, and they're just ruining it. So anyway, on all levels like that, the fact that Tibetans were a conquering empire. They had the Pentagon in their era. They were like Genghis Khan. Tibetans.
Yes, I know that many hundreds of years ago. I was very surprised when I first studied.
And then by the 15th, 16th century, they were demilitarized. And then they survived against because of the altitude and because of their skill and because of their great blessing that they gave by teaching people and teaching rulers of Mongolian kingdoms and Chinese kingdoms and Turkish kingdoms and things. And but then they were crushed in the 20th century by materialist armies, right?
So far, in this phase.
And they also got the Mongolians, who had a huge empire, to become peaceful and choose that, and then they suffered. But they are happier living without militarism and internally without a police state. like
Yeah.
we're not happy living. And they made that choice, and India had done that before them, of course. So that's the blessing of the Buddha science, you could say, Buddha sociology, and mind science about how to tame your own mind rather than conquer your own mind rather than conquer other people. And you're much happier when you live like that, even if someone comes and kills you. Never mind, you're born well.
So that's
Buddhism
in general.
Yeah.
So
You're
there's
born really well. I like your beard, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Reminds me of a Taoist sage.
Yeah. I just let it grow.
Thanks, that's fine.
And
not really yet, not yet.
I don't
Okay.
know if you can say anything about the different strands of Tibetan Buddhism, because there are, I think, at least 4 lineages. With your affiliation with the Dalai Lama, obviously that's one. I think that's the most well-known in the West. Correct me if I'm wrong, but then you also have like I guess it's the Karmapa lineage. Can you say anything
I
about?
met him when he was 5 years old in Tibet. I knew the old one too. Well, the thing is that I never used the word sect about the different types of Tibetan Buddhism, because if you look up in a dictionary, the word sect is used about the Protestant things that happened in Protestant, with the Reformation and everything, is where it got to be a live word in religious studies. The word sect. And what in its definition in a dictionary is a split in a religion where the members on the two sides of the split no longer consider that one on the other side to be in the same religion. So then the word sectarianism we think of as very serious conflict and a level of competition that often is violent. Was terrible. The war of Reformation, 100 Years' War, actually happened with the Reformation in Europe. And Tibetan Buddhism never had that. It doesn't mean that Tibetan Buddhists didn't fight each other now and then, but never over the fact that they're not our religion. So it was not really stimulated by some theological difference or something like that ever. It was over property, or somebody wanted another piece of land or something like that. And then of course the nobles or the warlords, when Tibet still did warlordism, the warlords would of course claim that they were blessed by somebody, and then they would act like they had some cover from the religion, like people do when they make wars. But actually, Buddhism never blesses wars. There's no holy war in Buddhism. There's no such theory. And so, first of all, the differences are not that huge. They all have Shakyamuni Buddha. They all have the same bunch of tantras and things like that. But here and there, an individual will make a fuss that only they have some special one, and then they'll act like they're superior. But that's not the mainstream in Tibet. And all the great, like the founder of the Dalai Lama school, Tsongkhapa, he studied with 55 teachers from all the different orders, which I prefer to call them, like Franciscan, Dominican, the different Cistercian. He studied with 55 teachers from all of them. And then later they have Padmasambhava saying that Tsongkhapa is Padmasambhava. And Shabdar Rinpoche, who was a great Nyingma yogi, he said the 5th Dalai Lama was a Nyingma. But he also studied all of them. So, and the Dalai Lama himself is not the head of the Gelugpa order. He's initiated and studies all the other orders. And this problem he had with some fanatics in the Gelugpa order, I don't know if you've followed that, the Shukden fanatics who were protesting him in Europe and the US now and then, in Australia. Well, they are members of the Gelugpa order who want everybody to have to be a Gelugpa, which Dalai Lama won't do. That's why they were after him. They quit it.
Okay.
They were funded by the Chinese to try to create dissension among the Tibetans.
Right, probably.
So then they quit. So I don't see that as a big problem personally, although I know there are still some. It was a little bit aggravated in the 70s, actually, in the 70s in the West.
Okay.
Which is a pattern predicted by different prophets from the 14th century. that there would come a time in the future when an outside power would come in and wreck Buddhism in Tibet. And at that time, when they would be driven out of Tibet, some different members of different orders would be competing with each other for new converts. And then they might get into kind of conflict. And that was predicted. And when they would realize that they should stop that, that's when they will be able to return to Tibet. And these materialists or anti-Buddhism people would retreat. There's a prediction.
Okay.
So
Quite a prophecy.
I believe that is the case, and I don't consider it a problem. And basically, I always say to everyone should do their own, for example, when the Dalai Lama finally got a visa in 79 and 80, a number of the lamas of the other orders who had established sort of Dharma centers here, some of them even went to the extremes of telling people, don't go see him, Dalai Lama, you'll get confused. They did. Do just stick with what I'm teaching. Don't go listen to him because you'll get confused.
Competing.
They knew how charismatic he is and how intelligent he is, and they were afraid they'd lose their market share. But they were shocked because when he would give talks to any of them, he would, who's your teacher type of thing, do you John Buchet? So follow him, strong, he's great, etc. He made no effort to create a single follower away from anybody else. He tried to reinforce whatever they taught, and he taught whatever he did in terms of whatever they were already teaching. And then they kind of relaxed, and then we kind of got less. But there's still a few hard cases who act like, gee whiz, if everybody likes the Dalai Lama, I'll lose my supporters. They get banked like that. To some extent. But I don't see it as a big problem. Although there is one contradiction, and that is all of the lamas, including of whatever order you may think the Dalai Lama is mainly associated with, although he isn't really, he's associated with all of them. On principle. But anyway, think of him as associated with the Gelugpa. But all of them, including them, they are actually de facto converting people to Buddhism. Their followers end up becoming Buddhists, taking refuge, becoming Buddhists. And the Dalai Lama is in principle against that. And when he gives a talk, he says, don't stop being Jewish, don't stop being Hindu, don't stop being Muslim, don't stop being whatever you are. And he says, if you learn something from Buddhism, be nice and respectful about Buddhism, and happy to go meditate, and that's no problem. He said, don't act like and then don't act like, I hate whatever I came from. Whatever your grandmother was, don't do that. Stick with them. So I gave a lecture once in San Francisco. It was the Pritzker lecture in a Jewish community center, about 400 or 500 people. And it was a special lecture, invited lecture. And there were 40 rabbis in the front row. And I had so much fun with them. And I said, guys, don't worry about those Jew-boos. Here we have an expression like that. I said, they're fine because they are Jews still. They just like to do some Buddhism. It's not a problem. They can do both. I said, you can worry. In fact, you can call me up. If any of them comes to you in the synagogue one day and says, Rabbi, I'm sorry, I'm not coming next Sabbath. I'm not a Jew-boo anymore. I'm just a boo.
And they'll call you. Okay.
But they did laugh. They laughed. I got them to laugh. So that's a little contradiction, and then particularly he says, and then he'll look at me if he's giving this rap to Dalai Lama, when he's giving some big speech, I happen to be sitting there when he can see me, he'll say, well, some of you, of course, it's legal in a pluralistic society to choose a religion if you happen to want to. But if you do, don't dislike or make any negative thing about where you started with, where you were born into, or what your parents or grandparents do. Don't make any wrong thing about it. It's legal to do it, but we don't encourage it. A and B, if you do happen to, for some reason, you get really into it, you want to do that, don't make any negative thing about where you came from. It makes a huge fuss about it.
Negative from where you
he
came
also
from.
has spoken to 3 popes, bunch of Muslim leaders in India, Hindu leaders in India, Jewish leaders, Christian, saying, well, the Jews, he likes the Jews particularly because they don't try to convert you.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah.
And except some dietary thing, they don't mess with you. But the Christians, of course, and the Muslims are desperate to convert you, and he asked them not to do that. He said, in the modern time, in one city, you have every religion. If they start competing too harshly, they'll fight eventually, and there's no good.
They will. It will bring a conflict. So Buddhism, especially from the way the Dalai Lama practices and promotes and teaches, it's really about peace and everyone getting along. And you can gain from Buddhism the teachings, but you don't have to give up everything that you are from before. You don't have to deny your past.
Well, although
you can
he
kind
doesn't
of blend it.
But also, for example, you might change some aspects of your theology. You might relax certain things. Like, for example, for the Christians, it's particularly hard because they've been brainwashed all this time that without Jesus, you're with Satan. So when they look at somebody else, if you meet like a regular one, have you chosen Jesus? If you say, well, actually, no, I like him a lot. It's good, but I didn't choose it. I don't give him that responsibility. And then they will not say anything, maybe personally, but then they think, okay, Satan's got this guy. They're trained like that. Even Buddha or Confucius or Lao Tzu, anybody, they're all with Satan because they didn't meet Jesus. They didn't go to Jerusalem. They didn't speak Aramaic. That's kind of ridiculous. And so there are theologies that are Christian that say God had this one son for this tribe, and then it spread to the Greeks and the Romans and throughout the West, fine, and even in the East, no problem. But the point is, they're still acting like if you have to be a member of this tribe to get saved and follow the Sermon on the Mount or whatever, and that's actually wrong. Jesus doesn't say that. At one point, when he's healing on the Sabbath, he says to somebody, we don't know of any other things he might have said because we don't have that extensive literature, but he says to somebody, I can heal on the Sabbath if I want to. If somebody needs it, I'm going to heal them. And you can only get to the Father through me, he says, because he's like trying to help them and give them faith. And he only is making a contrast between himself and Leviticus, the Jewish Bible, some regulation in there, like you're not supposed to heal on the Sabbath. That's all he's being critical about. So you're not going to get there through the regulation. You get there through my live ministry of the compassion of God. So he's not saying you can't study Buddhism or you can't study Hinduism or you can't study Taoism. He never heard of it.
Wow. So you do have a lot of sounds like a substantial amount of understanding of the Christian theology and the history, and you can be conversant in it, even though your expertise is in the Tibetan Buddhism. Have you given much effort or done a process of comparative religion?
Of course, I've had to teach for 50 years in the context where I do that. But the way it is in academia, you only spend most of your time on your own expertise, and teaching that. And they have other people who they're doing the Christianity and they're doing this and that. And the Dalai Lama, he doesn't really venture into the kind of mutual dialogue where you might be a little bit critical of some aspect. Except, for example, he says, and he does it just intuitively. He says, nowadays Jews and Christians, at one talk he once did at one event, where he was invited by the Imam of Northern California, who was Muslim, of course, and he had a Buddhist Muslim conference there in California. And he said that he didn't believe that Islam was the particularly most violent of the religions, even though they were doing ISIS and they were doing things nowadays. But he didn't believe that because the Christians had done crusades, and then there were terrible wars back in the ancient times when the Jews were an international political power. He thinks that, and he knows that Buddhists have made war, like the Sri Lankan Buddhists have been very bad to the Tamils, They've treated the Sinhalese people have treated them very badly. Some of the Burmese are being nasty to some of the Kachin and other people in Burma who are not Burmese ethnicity and also who are Christian or whatever. So he says Buddhists have been bad, although actually he doesn't say that, but a Buddhist can take pride. They have had less crusades, but they have still perverted the teaching and done that in the name, and they use the name, and he's against that in all of the traditions. And he doesn't know the history of Islam, but that Muhammad had to first defend himself. He had to first flee to Medina, because they would have killed him, the temple owners of the Kaaba, of the Mecca people. And then they attacked him many times in Medina with his community and have defended himself. And then his teaching became so popular, he outnumbered them, and he could have wasted the Meccans who had killed his people a lot. But he walked to the border of Mecca and he said, guys, you now see there was some battle that he won. His defenders won, and he broke the aggressor. And he said, I just won, and I could march in here under arms in Mecca, and I could direct the idols. He didn't like the idolatry, anti-culture. I could do that, but I'm not going to do that. I'm coming in unarmed next year. I'm just warning you now to get ready, and I'm going to walk in with no arms next year, he said.
Okay.
And he did that because, you don't kill in the name of religion, he said. That's good. But you can defend yourself, he said. And that's what he did. So, again, the Muslim theology collected Muhammad's sayings 100 years after he died, and then some sultans put in their stuff to find some support for their militias,
Of course.
Just like the Christians done. God was on our side, that they do that. And even it's harder for Buddhists because there's no creator in Buddhists, but there are gods, and they can act like I'm going to fight for this and that, but they don't usually. They've done less of that.
So I guess
it's hard to say for emptiness. Wait a minute, where's emptiness? Where is he?
It doesn't. No, it doesn't add up to do that.
So anyway, what else? I don't want to take up the whole day and ruin your life.
I know. Just two. I think two subjects that we didn't cover.
Okay.
Reincarnation, because that's maybe a central tenet of Buddhism, which other religions kind of misunderstand.
Yes, it is. No, other religions also. Most of the religions have it actually.
They do.
People don't know that in Christ's time, Jesus' time, for example, in the Mediterranean. Everybody believed in metempsychosis. It was common sense for people. It was purposely forbidden by Constantine. And he almost killed Origen. And actually his wife, the Empress, is the one who made him do it. That was another story.
I've heard a lot.
And you know why she did it? Because she was a rather rough Empress. She had executed a lot of people. She didn't want them coming back. Revenge. So she thought if they banned it, maybe it would stop happening.
So they didn't ban the knowledge of it, they banned reincarnation itself.
Yeah, they banned. Well, she thought by banning the theory, it would ban the fact, which was of course stupid.
Well,
my point is that as far as the Buddhist, when you say tenet, it sounds like, well, it's an item of belief that you have to have.
So what is it?
With that. I would agree and disagree. I would give you a more nuanced answer. In a way, from a Buddhist point of view, you kind of do have to have that to really transform yourself, to use the yogas to really go for it, because you have to be there in a context of multi-lives. Like if you're going to be a bodhisattva and be a Buddha to help all beings, you can't get that done in the next 2 weeks. So or a single life. You're committed with them. You're all going to be reborn together, and you're going to be better and better. Your relationship with them, and with no limit. And then it becomes possible once you have you have infinite future. And what I'm saying is, and also it becomes scary to have an infinite future where you might constantly be reborn as an armadillo or a cockroach. That's also kind of scary. So you don't want to get into from romanticizing armadillos or
I
cockroaches.
never really thought of it that way.
So from the Buddhist point of view, it's rather than a tenet of some sort of item of belief, non-rational belief, which is what people mentally associate with religion. It's considered a discoverable, empirical, evidenced
science
of reality.
It's like a science. It's not a dogma that you have to believe verbatim, but you can experience it, and they give you a way to explore
The
that.
evidence is many beings who remember their previous lives. That's evident. You yourself can learn to remember your previous life if you do a certain type of yoga. You can have that experience. And actually, because no description of relational processes is an absolute description. You know, Buddha is so cool. I really like Buddha for this reason. Mr. Adi, I really like it because he said, wow, I know everything. I really discovered. I can, and whatever I turn my mind to, I know it because I identify with it all. I'm like a CAT scan, giant CAT scan. I just float around like a cloud and I permeate everything. And so I know it. He said, but unfortunately, I can't really explain it to you. He said, because it's inexpressible. What it really is beyond expression. So in a way, he has a theory of no theory, or rather a theory that theories about relational reality, which is a little bit illusory. It has a sort of magical, illusory aspect to it. None of them are like the final, pin it down theory. So even their description of this continuity of energy, which is the multiple life theory, is like we describe it a certain way where you get a new body and blah, blah, blah. We have a Book of the Dead and we experience it. But you know, someone else might experience it a different way. We're open-minded. We're not saying that's absolute because it's not an absolute thing. It's a relational process. So the theory of the descriptions of it are going to be partial and relational. They're not going to absolutely capture it because no word and no theory captures experience. Experience
it's very deep.
It's fantastic. It's wonderful and even miraculous. So that's the way it is. That's about reincarnation. So what else? You know, I love one thing. Did you ever hear of Michelle Alexander?
I heard that name.
Well, I'm very fond of her, although I never met her. I wanted to meet her, and I was invited to meet her once, and there's something happened, I couldn't go. She's a sociologist somewhere in the middle of maybe Chicago, maybe Madison, I don't know.
Sociologist, okay.
She wrote a book called New Jim Crow about the prison labor gulag system in this country, where over 1 million black guys are making license plates, etc. For 2 cents an hour. It's like it's a cotton field. Disgusting. Private prisons also they don't want them ever to get out because they're cheap labor, slave labor. So she wrote a brilliant book about it. And I didn't even read the whole thing. I'm so bad. But I read enough about it and I agree with it. But I haven't finished it. That's it. I confess. But she wrote an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal of all places about a year ago that made me even more want to meet her, but I just didn't get around to it. And where she said, I wish I believed in future life, she said. And I wish more people did, because then maybe they wouldn't be so cruel and so destructive and self-defeating. If they felt that there would be a consequence to them would go on.
Ongoing, yes.
Ongoing. She said, I wish more people did. I wish I believed, she said, meaning she didn't. So I just thought that was so great. I really liked that.
Well, at least she touched on the concept. Maybe she will begin to believe.
If I could meet her, I think I would help her.
Yeah, you can. You definitely can.
But that doesn't mean you can do that and be a Christian. You can do that and be a Muslim. Those Christians did not reject it. Constantine in the Council of Nicaea said, we're no longer going to hold that tenet. Because he would have never asked you to believe anything. He asked you to experience things. He said, try to experience it. Then give me some credibility if you experience something by following this method and you get some benefit. Then you give me a little credibility. But I'm not asking you to even believe what I say. You test what I say in your experience. And then if it works out, then I'll ask for a little credibility. He said, but not just because I say something.
Wow.
That's dogma. We don't like that.
Wow.
Dr. Thurman, we've come to about 6 o'clock, and we've covered so much at this point, and I don't want to take too much more of your time.
That's right, but you said there were 2 more things. So what's the other one? Then it would quickly. I won't be so verbose. I apologize.
The other one will be about the Dharma, the wheel of Dharma, which I had heard there was major philosophy and now some analysis and maybe some newer revelation into that.
Yes.
That
I have a new book coming out.
It would run 3,000, 5,000 years, but maybe half that time. What do you know about this?
Yes. Well, I have a new book coming out that I think is going to be very useful in that light. And it will show how Buddha Dharma can reinforce all the other dharmas, all the other religions, and even secular humanism. Because what finally Dharma means in, the great saint and scholar Vasubandhu of the 5th century, he said, he has a very analytic guy, scientific type of guy. There's 11 different main meanings of the word Dharma, coming from the word dhir, which the verb, Sanskrit verb dhir, which means to hold something. And 5 or 6 of them are meaning like what you would call pattern maintaining meanings, like law, religion. Sometimes you read a Buddhist book where they'll translate the Dharma wheel as the wheel of law, but that's a wrong translation. But we will see that because Dharma can mean that. The word can mean that. It has this range, like in a dictionary, you see 11, 10 meanings, 5 meanings of something, old meaning, new meaning, something. So it can mean law, religion, duty. And when in that Bhagavad Gita, when they say Krishna should fight, that's his duty as a warrior. That's his dharma as a warrior. So but those meanings of dharma are the lesser meanings according to Buddhist philosophy, science. The higher meanings are reality itself.
Reality
is dharma. And why? Because if you know what reality is, it is holding us in freedom from suffering. Because the only reality Buddha discovered was not suffering. He did not discover suffering. He knew all about it to start with, and so does everybody else. He discovered freedom from suffering. Nirvana is what he discovered. That's why he has a movement. That's why he created an education system for them so people could discover that about themselves. But that's what their reality is. The reason he said you can attain nirvana is because you are finding out what you really are. It's freedom. You're free from suffering. It's what you really are. And you can even be in the world and still be free. And then and actually that's a good kind of freedom. It's not like the non-mask wearing, lying, non-loyal opposition Republican freedom, where they refuse to participate in democracy and they just think they can say anything and it'll be true. And they're free and they're not going to wear a mask. They don't care if you catch the disease. But even those people in North Dakota really freaked us all out. I don't know if you saw those articles. People who were dying in a hospital with COVID-19, virus, who didn't believe that was what was killing them because it didn't exist. They were told by Alex Jones or some moron, or the president moron. It's just a momentary thing. And we're actually dying and did die while they were not believing it. Not believing what was killing them. I mean, it's really, their relatives weren't even believing it. So they were thinking somebody did something to them in the hospital. It's really terrible. So anyway, my point is real freedom means you can be very responsible effectively because you know that you're responsible for your choices. You may still be interacting with things. Real freedom is not just floating in space somewhere, but it's dealing with specific things which are better or worse and picking the better because space is filled with all those little things. That's called non-duality of, samsara and nirvana.
Non-duality.
That's what he taught. So I have this book coming. My birthday this summer will come out.
What is your birthday?
It was delayed by circumstance, which is called Buddhism is Realism.
Buddhism is Realism.
So what you take refuge in, if you if you understand what you're doing when you become a Buddhist, or when you really become respectful or venerate the Buddha, is you take refuge in reality. So this is the opposite of our denialism, where we say ignorance is bliss. And in fact, in this case, ignorance is the cause of suffering, because it makes us think we're in this world that is lined up against us, and we can never overcome what's happening to us. And whereas knowledge means we're so happy and we're so free, we don't even fear death.
Wow.
Because death is this returning to the arms of the mother and being reborn in a better way when we're completely wide open and we're filled with love and joy. We'll find happy, we'll be reborn in a joyful, loving body. That's a real freedom. Freedom to make the right choices and to be happy. And I originally had the title of it, Buddhas Have More Fun.
That was going to be the title?
Publisher won't let me have that title.
Oh, maybe you can
Probably
just
because
do
of
a
the
quote.
whole suffering of the COVID and everything. It sounds too flippant. And
Yeah, maybe not.
And so they've changed that to Buddhism is realism. But although I want to say something like Buddhism is higher realism. Or and if you know it, you'll have more fun. I want to make a subtitle, but I may fail to get that.
I'm going to have to seek out that book as soon as I can get my hands on it then.
Okay, sure.
Summer.
Listen, that's really nice. So anyway, I don't know, your friend Carol was around, and you thought maybe you all could do something to help us out. If so,
Yeah.
I'm very grateful. If not, that's okay. I enjoyed a lot talking to you. I think you are
Definitely.
a Taoist master. You must be. I love that.
I hope we can follow up. Let me review everything that we've gathered here and discussed.
Okay.
I recorded it, and I want to follow up with you.
Yes,
Thank you.
So please allow me to communicate with you further,
I'll be in touch.
Absolutely.
and let's see what we can do
Absolutely, no
together.
problem.
Thank
No
you so much. I'm going to
Okay, all right.
learn
Thank you.
so much from
Thank
what
you.
you
Thank
gave.
Ms. Adi.
Yes.
Ms. Adi. O-D-Y. You know, Ote is a place in India. And also, Ote has a yogic meaning. And it's some kind of thing when you open the central channel in your brain chakra, and you experience a certain joy there. It's very interesting. Odi has a very auspicious meaning. I mean,
I knew nothing about it. That's great. I want to learn more about those.
Odi has an auspicious meaning, which is fun.
Thank you.
Okay, so nice to talk to you after a long time.
It's really nice to talk to you.
Being a mystery person. So I'm happy to talk to you. And as I say, we are planning to try to make sure that Tibet House / Menla lasts past our death and goes on, because it may take a long time. And so we're working on that. That's our real thing.
I'm sure I will help with that, and you can let me know
Okay.
what you think of what I can do. Tap into my potential for that.
All right.
Okay,
Take
thank
care,
you.
and
farewell.
Good night to your partner.
I will say good night to
and lovely to talk to you. Okay.
Yes.
All the best.
Okay. You too.
Thank you.
Best.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.